But what I know Rob would say is that he wished, as I wished, that there were 1 million of you, Dr. Koslow. Thank you so much. My congratulations to you on this very well-deserved honor.
Well, thank you very much. I want to thank the board of Beth-el. I want to thank the committee that gave me this honor. I want to thank Rekha for that very nice and I want to talk a little bit about how I got here today, and also about the concept of why people should do and how we can stimulate in our kids doing more community service, because I think that's really something that we as a Jewish community can do. And I go back to when I was in Hebrew school in New York City at Israel Center in Hillcrest Manor, which was one of the largest conservative synagogue in Queens, and I think possibly New York City at the time. There were over 1,200 students in the Hebrew school. And we had sometimes as many as 5 or 6 kids getting bar mitzvahs on any particular Shabbat. I fortunately was the only one on my Shabbat, so I didn't have to share the stage. But what I remember from that was that we would probably, at least twice a year, we would do something that was a school-wide, synagogue-wide community service event. We would go and we would march on the UN in something in support of Israel. We would do something that would raise food for the hungry. And the thing that we would do is we would honor the people who were the most successful in either raising money or in organizing people to get out or bringing food donations in. And I'm going to get back to that a little bit later in my talk, so that'll remember that point. I've been very fortunate in my life in kind of being in the right spot at the right time. And one of the things that I'm not the proudest about was I had a complete inability to learn Hebrew when I was in Hebrew school. The principal of Hebrew school was Rabbi Ness, and there were about a dozen of us. So what they did was they organized a class when I was about 10 or 11 years old, so I still had a couple of years left of my regular Hebrew school, called Elliot Ness and the Unteachables. And I say this is fortunate because the average student in Hebrew school spent 89% of his time trying to learn Hebrew, and very small percentage of the time really learning what Judaism was about, learning how Judaism fit into the community, learning how Judaism tzedakah, learning how Judaism relates to other religions and to other thought processes. And we had one of the most fantastic classes, and the interesting thing that's telling is that of the average about 250 people that graduated from Hebrew school each year that finished their bar and bat mitzvah, only about 3 or 4 stayed in for what we called Hebrew high school back then, which usually went until you were 16. Every single student in this class with Elliot Ness stayed taking classes in Hebrew high school until he was 16. And every single one in high school was involved in some type of community service. And I think that that is an important lesson to learn. The next important lesson that I learned, one thing I learned very early was if you don't speak up and you don't try to make suggestions, nothing gets done. And so I learned very early that if you have an idea, go and talk about it, and try to beat the woods. And as Rekha mentioned, in high school I came up with 2 things that I'm very proud of, which have had a national impact. Both the walks to raise money and then also the community service instead of class to get out of classes and get community service and get academic credit for it in high school. But then the next thing that really changed my life in terms of this was when I was a junior faculty member at Old Medical College. I went to an academic lecture, and every big academic lecture, there's always an incoming and an outgoing president, and the outgoing president usually gives a speech about what he thinks the message people should take away. And this wasn't the day. We all know this, and we know people who have been in our community who are like this. When physicians spent their entire world was medicine. Their entire life was medicine. To the exclusion of sometimes, unfortunately, their families and their community and the synagogues, and they became so entrenched. The typical thing that I remember seeing from physicians I knew in the 50s, 60s, and 70s was they retired and they very quickly died because they didn't have any outside interests and they didn't have any outside things that they did. And what this professor, president of the Society of Academic Surgery, said, and I don't even remember his name, but it has left a meaningful impact on my whole life, was that we have to remember that we live in three, and I actually have four communities. We live in the community of our profession, we live in the community of our family, we live in the community of our community, and we also live in the community of our synagogue. And what we have to do in order to have balance in our life is that we have to really make sure that we give to all four aspects of this. Well, he said three, but I'm adding the fourth, taking the liberty of adding the fourth. And we have to give equally. And this was probably, if you was to ask me, what is the 1 hour that impacted my life the most? It was that hour that I sat and listened to this presidential speech from the president of the Society of Academic Surgery back in 1989. Because it showed me not only that you can get too buried into one aspect of your life. You can get too buried into your synagogue. You can get too buried into your job, your occupation. You can get too buried into being a sports fanatic. And Rekha Borsellino was an example of someone who did it. He was a sports fanatic. He was very involved in the community. He was very involved in his job, very passionate about them. And I know because we used to see him and the family all the time and how they interacted at Paradise Pizza. When I think we both were there on a Tuesday night schedule of going every week on Tuesday night, and we always used to run into them there. I could see how he interacted with his family, that he was passionately into his family. And I also saw how his family was passionately into him with during that last year when he was unfortunately dying of ALS. Now, what I find is, and this is something which is the question, what do I get out of doing this community service? And I always have this discussion with my wife because the question is should you just get out of it the feeling that you're doing good for someone else? And my feeling is, no, you should get out of it as, you should enjoy it. You should enjoy what you're doing. And we should teach our kids that they should enjoy doing community service. It's not just something that we're obligated to do. If we take it as an obligation that the Torah and the Talmud and all the sages tell us that we have to do tikkun olam, we will never be able to really teach the joy of tikkun olam to our children and to our grandchildren. And what we need to do is we need to teach them that there's a joy to it. One of the things that we don't do is when kids, and this comes back to what I said before that I bring this back to it, when we have kids who are playing sports in high school, what do we do to the MVP? We give them big trophies. We carry them on our shoulder in the homecoming parades. You know, the kids that are successful, the quarterbacks, the prom queens and kings, and all the other things. We don't do that for our kids who do Kahuna Love. And I think that that is something that we need to, as a community, need to think about, and need to think about how do we make it joyful for our kids so that they get an enjoyment out of it. They get a fulfillment, they get a psychic fulfillment out of it, out of doing good community service. And you can, you know, there's ways that we can help our kids enjoy doing this, because it's a lot of fun. I go out and there's things that I do that maybe might not be as fun for other people, but going to these villages when I go on these missions and having people just have this look of thank you. They don't necessarily even have to say it. You can see it there in their eyes that they're just thankful that someone is coming to see them. I have fun going and always raising my hand and being the first one to ask a question at a caucus event. You know, and again, this isn't necessarily what everybody enjoys doing, but there are so many things to do. And unfortunately, and John, this is the Republican part of the speech. Unfortunately, we're going to be coming into an era where there's going to probably be less and less public services, and we're going to rely more and more on the generosity and the ability to give of people in the community. And we're going to have to even be more so teach our kids and teach our grandkids how to be out there and how to give to the community and give to others. And so I think that we're, as a nation, not just as a Jewish community, we're going to be seeing some unfortunate but significant changes in our society. And we have to think about how we're going to respond to it. And I think that we can do it, but we got to really be thinking about this from the very early time. One suggestion that I'll give, that unfortunately I only did it a few years with my kids, but that the studies are coming out that it's really very good. Every year, give your kids or give your grandkids, each of them, $25, $50, and say, donate this to a charity of your choice. Let that, just a simple thing like that. It's amazing how this then gives them the permission to be lifelong donators to their synagogue, to their community, to charitable needs. And this is just a simple thing that can be done. I can probably stand here all night, but we all want to get into dinner, and we have one more awardee to give. But there are other things that you can do. Get your kids involved when you go out and do community service. Show them, teach them by example. But I want to thank, again, Beth-el Synagogue, the committee, the board. I want to thank Rekha and everybody for this award. It's really, I was absolutely shocked when I got the call. And I particularly want to thank Maji, my wife, who puts up with my disappearing for a week or 10 days off to Haiti or off to someplace else, or going off to 225 caucus events during a 10-month period. And without her keeping the home going and keeping the family going, I would not be able to do this. And her allowing me to do this has made me be one of the most fulfilled men I could possibly be. And that's what I find is so joyful in life, is that I just feel so fulfilled. So thank you all very much.